Hello again guys, and welcome back to Research Reality. This video will be a continuation of our previous video, You're Only as Good as Your Sources. Part 2! Definitely check out that video as it will fill in the context for what we will be discussing here, and I will link that down below. But for the purposes of this video, I am pretty much detailing my primary information sources, mostly as it pertains to my favorite authors, my favorite public intellectuals, people that have had a huge influence on my way of thinking. Because again, just like the wall behind me, everyone that we will be discussing is relatively connected. They are all kind of in the same ballpark, and as we get into more of these reviews, we will actually be referencing a lot of these people or the work that they've done. So again, it's all kind of loosely connected. But again, I guess the main reason why I'm making these videos is just to be super transparent with where I get my information. Because again, like I've said on previous videos, nobody knows everything, but everybody knows something. I myself am constantly reevaluating my worldview as new information comes in, and I rely on people like who we will be discussing to help me shape or navigate the ever treacherous waters that is the information world that we are living in, I guess. Or at least that's the general gist. And of course, let me know your thoughts on the people that I will be sharing now. Love them, hate them, what do you think? Or is there someone that you think could fit within this context? Because again, just like on the wall, if there's someone, a particular person or a particular group of people that you think fits within this context, definitely let me know, because I would be happy to check that out. And like I've said before, I'm really big on the power of nuance. A lot of these people I might have hard disagreements with, but that has not stopped me from continuously listening to them just to get different viewpoints, different perspectives on various topics. Just trying to cast, again, that wide net. Because even though you might have those disagreements, it does not necessarily mean that there's nothing that you can learn from them. And again, this is just my personal list. And now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in with my number one, Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is by far my favorite public intellectual. He's often referred to as the father of modern linguistics for his contribution to the field during his time at MIT. And Chomsky really came to prominence during the Vietnam War, where he spoke out against the war and the government itself. And from there, he never stopped. Never stopped. Never stopped. And from there, he never stopped. He has written or co-authored over 100 books, given thousands upon thousands of hours worth of lectures and interviews, and all of it details government atrocities, government cover-ups, abuses of power, corruption, not just for, I almost said Ohio, not just for the American government, but really world politics as a whole. Because just like the wall and just like this list here, even world governments are super interconnected. And Chomsky, even at one point, was actually the most cited scholar, I think like back in the 80s. I don't even know who would be considered the most cited scholar now, probably like Joe Rogan or something. Now, Chomsky isn't for everyone. The man speaks in the language of raw data, just a computer spitting out raw facts. But it's the data that he conveys that's so important. He is constantly citing from the written press, including from other countries, and he looks for the discrepancies within the reporting. What might be like 2 sentences in the Wall Street Journal might be like an entire paragraph or even a whole article from a publication elsewhere. How is this topic being spun? How is it being reported? Are they actually reporting everything? What are they leaving out? But the thing about Noam Chomsky that makes him my favorite is that he's dedicated his life to this. The man is 95 at time of reporting, and he is still going strong. He is still writing books. He's still giving interviews, and he's actually still involved in academia. Again, he's dedicated his life for this, and for the knowledge that he's given to the public for all of these decades, and just the sheer persistence that he's just never let up on, definitely puts him at number one for me. And there's an awesome video that I'll try to link below where he just goes down the list of former presidents talking about how each one could basically be indicted for war crimes. Noam Chomsky also wrote the book Manufacturing Consent along with Edward Herman. And again, following along with those same lines, it's a powerful assessment of how the US mass media failed to provide the kind of information that we need to understand the world. Again, just one of his many, many books. And Noam Chomsky is also featured on Low-Key's album, The Soundtrack to the Struggle Part 2, where Low-Key did an interview with him and put him on the album. So yeah, actually Noam Chomsky is technically right behind me. But yeah, pretty cool. Alright, next up we have Sam Harris, who is my new current favorite, I guess you could say. I definitely listen to him the most at time of filming. I really think that Sam is one of the greatest rational thinkers of our time. His analysis, at least from my perspective, tends to be very spot on. However, I do hard disagree with his stance on Israel. Not to say that I even fully disagree with what he's saying, because there is a lot of truth to his rationale, but still, I just feel like he's not really getting the full picture of the situation. And so while there are a lot of things that I do hard disagree with him on, as I could say for just about everybody on this list, including Noam Chomsky, for Sam, I still think his perspective on artificial intelligence or the current political or social climate is still definitely worth checking out if you've never heard of him before. He has an excellent podcast called Making Sense, and of course he's written a number of books himself, as well as many lectures, many debates. Now, if you absolutely detest Sam Harris, odds are you're more in favor of the next guy, Jordan Peterson. So given the scope of this list, again, just about everyone is going to be controversial to someone. Jordan Peterson, I would say, ranks a little higher on the controversy list than most. Just like Sam, I have massive disagreements with Jordan, a trend that I find is increasing as he's been inundated into the Daily Wire camp. I classify Jordan Peterson as the public intellectual who I disagree with the most, but simultaneously who I have learned the most from. So yeah, despite those controversies, despite those disagreements, I still can't discount Jordan as a fierce intellectual, though it does get a little tiresome when during debates he refuses to answer simple questions about religion. And again, while I disagree with his thoughts on climate change and various social issues, given my own background, my own information silo, and just everything the algorithm provides me, I use Jordan Peterson as a sort of check on my worldview, where he gives me viewpoints, perspectives on various topics that I would not have considered or even heard otherwise. And one of my favorite debates are actually between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. I think they've had 2, maybe even 3 at this point. Definitely worth checking out if you're into that kind of thing. Anyways, moving on to the next one, Naomi Klein. She is the author of many books, including The Shock Doctrine, which basically details what she calls disaster capitalism, where basically the government and or businesses will take advantage of a crisis because it suits their profit margins. I think in the book she details Hurricane Katrina and just all of the shady practices that took place after that hurricane hit, along with many other instances of the same thing happening. This all culminates into Naomi Klein being a stark critic for neoliberal policies. And again, she is actually on Low-Key's second album, Soundtrack to the Struggle 2, where it's just a snippet of one of her lectures, again talking about neoliberalism. And so at time of filming, her second to last book dealt with climate change, but her latest book deals with social media, how we're starting to get 2 separate realities, the real and the virtual, and it's getting easier to conflate the 2. Coming up next, we have Chris Hedges, also one of my earlier influences along with Chomsky and Klein. Chris Hedges is a journalist, most notably a war correspondent who reported from various conflict zones, and therefore has a very interesting worldview when it comes to the topic of war. Unfortunately though, by the time I got to his book, The World as It Is, I was actually kind of burnt out on reading about war and depravity and all of that jazz. So I felt like I really wasn't learning that much that I hadn't already gained from previous reads, so I did not finish this one, but it's still a good read if you're interested in that topic. With that being said, of course his lectures deal with exposing the darker side of humanity. Tends to be very depressing, but also very informative, because there's nothing better than being informed while also chronically being depressed about all the stuff you're learning about, am I right? No, I'm not. Not exactly a cheery fellow. But he is still very pointed and staunch in his critiques of various systems and things, and he's also incredibly well read, and he runs a very good YouTube channel where he talks about just various things happening in the world today. Definitely a wealth of knowledge, that Chris Hedges. Up next we have Chalmers Johnson. Johnson wrote a number of really good books, one of them being Blowback, which is all about American foreign policy and how our actions overseas tend to bring something called blowback, which is the unintended consequences of, again, our intervention overseas. Johnson worked for the CIA and was sort of a what do you call that? An expert in Asian and Japanese affairs, and also details a number of atrocities committed on that side of the globe. So yeah, he's a very good resource for foreign policy, he's a really good resource for the military-industrial complex, and he has a very good video, if I can find it, detailing just what exactly it costs the American taxpayer to have such a vast military. Like, the roots are dug in so much deeper than you would really think. I'll try to find that video and I'll link it down below. Up next, Christopher Hitchens, another critical thinker and a staunch critic of Bill Clinton and really the Clintons in general, because really the more you look into them, the more shady they seem to be as people and also government officials. Like, seriously, he really had it out for them, and I suppose for good reason. There's definitely a lot that happened from the Clinton administration that I think kind of gets overlooked after Bush got in office, and then of course we had 9/11 and then the Iraq War and then just everything else. So Hitchens is definitely a strong voice. It would be very interesting to see his thoughts on the current political climate, especially as it relates to Israel-Palestine. And coming up next, we have Edward Said, a Palestinian American. He is obviously a great resource for that topic, mostly in a historical context kind of way. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2003. So we do not have a modern take from Said, but we do still have a lot to digest from his previous work. And after Edward Said, we have Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn being the author of multiple books. He also gives a solid critique of the idea of American exceptionalism. And funny enough, I think that there's a lot that he wrote and spoke about that, at the time at least, it wasn't really privy to the American mind. But now, over time, I see a lot of the topics that he was hitting on kind of becoming more mainstream as the internet has allowed more information to be easily accessed. So no longer do you have to go to the library to find the more obscure information. Now you can just find solid sources online. And after Howard Zinn, we move on to Norman Finkelstein, who, yet again, is featured on a low-key album. Low-key just getting all of the love, apparently. I really should probably diversify my thought patterns so that I can come up with different albums that feature these people. I think actually Howard Zinn, he wrote a book called You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train, and that is actually a title in a System of a Down song. So I mean, there is that. But anyways, Norman Finkelstein, yes, he's featured on another low-key song. Also very big on Israel-Palestine. That seems to also be a big theme. As it should, but you get what I'm saying. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm 90% certain that years and years ago, I was listening to a lecture from Norman Finkelstein. He was talking about how the possibility is always open, where even though you might have opposing forces, you can always work to build those inroads that include everybody, and you can work on finding solutions to those problems. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you facilitate discussion about all of your grievances, there's always a possibility that you can find resolution as long as you bring everyone to the table, all of their voices are heard, and just how important it is to build those inroads. And I thought it was really profound, and it really stuck with me all these years. Like 90% certain that that was from Norm. Could be someone else. But anyways, and last but not least for this video, we have Jonathan Haidt. I'm actually rereading his book, The Righteous Mind, because it just seems so timely given the current state of American politics, with the subtitle, of course, being Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. So yeah, seems like a good thing to read currently. But yeah, Jonathan comes from a very strong academic background. He's written a number of other books, such as The Coddling of the American Mind and The Anxious Generation. That latest book mostly pertaining to, again, social media and the devastating effects that it can have on the upcoming generations. And yeah, so that concludes the list for this video. So in part 3, we will talk about some of my favorite people from the alternative media space, you know, some of my favorite favorite YouTubers, some of my favorite podcasters, even favorite comedians, and we will see what happens there. So that's my list currently. Do you like any of these people? Do you not like these people? Who do you listen to that you trust to provide you with solid information? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And as always, for our Revolution reviews, let me know which album on the wall you would like to see me review next. But yeah, guys, that concludes the video. You're only as good as your sources part 2. Stay tuned for part 3 coming later on. If you like the vibe, definitely like and subscribe. And until then, guys, we will see you on the next video. Later.